Far from the hustle and bustle of the city, at the end of an old, winding road, there lay an abandoned village. They said it used to be a thriving community, but decades ago something happened. One night, all its inhabitants disappeared. They left open doors behind, unfinished meals on tables and toys scattered in yards. Their bodies were never found and their disappearance was never solved. The cold of the piercing night did not discourage Camel, an avid seeker of paranormal phenomena, whose curiosity drew him to this village. He hoped that his visit would dispel many myths and legends, and maybe even provide evidence of what really happened. As he crossed the threshold of the first house, he felt the air become heavier and the light from his flashlight seemed to fight against the resistance of the darkness. The walls were faded and dust covered almost every surface. Camel walked through room after room, recording every detail on his camera. Suddenly he heard a whisper. He was so quiet that at first he wasn't sure if it was his imagination. But as he went further, the whispers became louder. Camel began to understand single words and even sentences. "Go away, you shouldn't be here, they're still here." His heart began to beat like crazy, but the spirit of adventure was stronger than fear. Deep inside another house he found an old journal. The pages were yellowed and torn, but the writing was legible. The diary described life in the village, the routine, joys and sorrows of everyday life. However, the entries became increasingly chaotic and paranoid. Recent entries spoke of shadows that moved beyond the edges of reality and whispering voices that no one else could hear. Camel felt the skin on the back of his neck stand on end. For a moment he wondered if he should continue, but his curiosity was stronger than his fear. He ventured deeper into the village, to the place that seemed to be the center of the mysterious disappearance, the church. As he entered, he immediately noticed the strange atmosphere. The benches were empty, but fresh marks in the dust showed that someone had been there before him. At the altar stood an old, dusty cross, slightly tilted, as if someone had recently tried to move it. Camel approached the altar and then noticed a small, barely visible switch. As he pressed it, suddenly the floor beneath him began to shift, revealing a staircase leading down into darkness. He grabbed the flashlight tighter and started to descend. There was an unpleasant musty and something sweet smell in the air that Camel couldn't identify. Downstairs, he found himself in a wide corridor whose walls were covered with strange drawings and symbols that pulsated and changed as he looked at them. He felt his mind begin to rebel, his logical thinking escaping from the madness depicted on these walls. The corridor led to a large, round room. In the center stood an altar stone, with stone tables placed around it. There were glasses lying on one of them, as if someone had just left them there. He moved closer to examine them, but then he heard the whispers again, loud and clear now, in a language he didn't know but instinctively understood. The altar began to pulsate with red light, and Camel felt terror grip his heart. He suspected he had found the heart of a lost ritual, the key to the mystery of this village. The need to understand what had happened was growing in his mind, but at the same time the fear was growing that I just heard a scream. It was piercing, but it seemed to come from far away. Camel leads the way, the flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the empty corridors behind him. But when he goes back to the altar, there are shadows. However, there are no ordinary shadows, human figures in silhouette, twisting and accessible to common forms. He realized that he was not alone and that he might soon join the people of this village. Now, among these shadows, Camel realized that the true history of this place had never been discovered. Verified and I recognized the impending disaster, he stepped back, the release, but every move checked deeper into the maze of nightmare. And when they were revealed on the cameras, they realized that nothing of what was visible was recorded. The screens were serious. The very existence of this place which could occur if you tried to obtain its secret. Camel never returned to his world. His software was found scattered at the entrance to the church, but he was never found. Yes, the village remained abandoned, hiding its secrets and whispers amidst the whirlwinds of time and stories. Only the bravest or most foolish dared to cross its threshold, but even they could not lift the veil that conveyed this information from the world known and recognizable to humans. So, if you come across an old one, forgotten by her, to a place that is not on the map, the village disappears. And do not look for what causes disclosure in its shadow, for some secrets are buried deep without cause. On the outskirts of the city, which live in your own living life, lived the stories of the searcher detective Camel, who disappeared without a trace. Only stories that were found in abandoned villages were received. Among those who listened to his story was a young woman with a friend called Lena, who was taken in by Camel. Lena was gifted in science, and the mysterious village seemed to be the perfect place to expand her research. She had prepared better than Camel, securing herself with ropes, supplies of food and water, a powerful flashlight, and a camera with a new type of sensor that she had access to that recorded something that conventional devices couldn't capture. As she reached the printer, an unsettling kitchen immediately appeared in the air. It didn't introduce her to, immediately, feeling adrenaline and determination, by revealing the truth. She quickly found the church to which Camel's footsteps lead, and without hesitation she descended to the church hidden beneath it. The location is the same as the source in Camel's diaries, which Lena studied carefully before the expedition. The keys they used, as well as the stone tables that now form the basis for consideration. Only tenderness piercing the coldness of fear that he must move on. Begins to explore the internal corridors that branch off from the independent chambers. In one of them, they came across a wall that seemed to be breathing, pulsating like a living thing. Intrigued, Lena moved closer to your camera and is recognized that the pulsing is in sync with her own heart. Continuing her investigation, Lena discovered a new corridor that was not mentioned in any of Camel's descriptions. An inner voice told her not to go in, but her scientific curiosity was stronger. As she moved forward, the air became thicker and the pulsation of the walls became more intense. Suddenly, Lena's camera recorded something that human eyes couldn't see. There were clearly visible signs and symbols on the screen that seemed to indicate some type of map or instruction. Lena managed to decipher some of them as warnings and clues to some ancient ritual that had the power to open gates. With fascination but also growing concern, Lena followed the instructions until she reached a small chamber in which a strange artifact occupied the central place. It was an ancient stone circle with moving parts that could be rotated and aligned in a specific pattern. While Lena was manipulating the artifact, she felt a vibration that permeated the entire room. When she finally placed all the elements according to the instructions she had read, suddenly the air began to vibrate and reality seemed to wave. Lena stood in the center of the room, and the light from her flashlight began to flicker, as if playing some incomprehensible symphony with the forces she had awakened. Then she heard Camel's voice, clear and distinct, as if he was right next to her. He spoke of doors between worlds, of forces that lurk beyond the limits of human understanding. Lena felt that she was on the verge of a great discovery, but at the same time her intuition told her that if she continued, she might never come back. Camilla knew from the story that this place was like a trap. Once activated, it could not be closed without consequences. Still, her desire to understand what happened to the villagers, what Camel encountered, and what secrets this ancient ritual hides pushed her to action. Committed to solving the puzzle, Lena pressed the final stone on the artifact. Light exploded around her and the world she knew melted away like mist beneath her fingers. Lena, like Camel before her, crossed the threshold into something unknown. And the village continued, undisturbed, with another story of a lost soul lingering in its shadows and stones. Whether this was the answer Lena was looking for or another mystery for anyone to solve remained unknown. One thing was certain, the mystery of the village was far from solved.